Karen's fist slammed against the glossy black metal, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Her eyes went wide as the biometric lock flashed red, denying her entry. "No, no, no," she shrieked, scrabbling at the gate. But it wouldn't budge. Little did she know, her actions had just set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. As the sun rose over the quiet suburban neighborhood, Alex sipped his coffee, savoring the first peaceful moments of the day. He glanced out the window, taking in the pristine landscaping and security cameras dotting the perimeter of his property. His pride and joy, this fortress-like home, was the culmination of years of hard work and a not-so-subtle nod to his obsession with Homeland security. The peaceful silence was shattered by the sound of a car horn blaring. Alex rushed to the window to see an enraged woman throwing herself against the electrified gate, her face twisted in fury. "Karen," he muttered under his breath, recognizing the neighborhood busybody. He watched as she clawed at the gate, her nails scraping uselessly against the sleek metal. Suddenly, the lock flashed red, and Karen let out an ear-piercing scream. "No, no, no," she wailed, her voice carrying across the otherwise still morning air. Alex couldn't help but smirk. He had always known his state-of-the-art security system would come in handy one day, and he was about to witness its effectiveness firsthand. He strolled to the front door, straightening his tie as he went. This was going to be good. "Having trouble, Karen?" he called out, his voice dripping with feigned concern as he stepped onto the porch. Karen whirled around, her eyes narrowing into slits. "You," she spat, pointing an accusatory finger at him. "Open this gate right now." Alex raised a hand, his expression one of amused indifference. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Karen. You see, this gate is biometrically locked. Only authorized personnel can access it." "Authorized personnel?" Karen screeched, her voice reaching a pitch that set Alex's teeth on edge. "I live right next door, you pompous ass. Open it." Alex chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "I'm sorry, but that's simply not how it works. You see, after the incident with your dog last month, I've made some, shall we say, upgrades to my security system." Karen's face flushed a deep crimson, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "That was an accident," she protested. "And now you're just being petty." "Petty?" Alex raised an eyebrow, a smug smile spreading across his face. "I prefer to think of it as taking appropriate precautions. After all, the safety of my family is my top priority." Karen let out a frustrated growl, her nails digging into the palms of her hands. "This isn't over, Alex," she hissed, shooting him a venomous glare. "Mark my words, you're going to regret this." With that, she turned on her heel and stalked back to her car, the tires squealing as she peeled out of the driveway. Alex watched her go, his arms folded across his chest, a satisfied grin plastered on his face. "We'll see about that, Karen," he murmured, already anticipating the next round of their ongoing battle. Little did he know, this was just the beginning. The rest of the day passed in an uneasy stillness for Alex. He knew Karen well enough to know that she wouldn't let this incident go easily. Sure enough, as the sun began to set, he spotted a familiar car pull up outside his gate. Karen stormed out, clutching a thick sheaf of papers in her hand. Alex watched with a mixture of amusement and trepidation as she began furiously shoving the papers through the bars of the gate. "What's this, Karen?" he called out, stepping outside to investigate. "Your precious gate has violated my rights." Karen shrieked, her face flushed with fury. "I've filed a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association. They're going to force you to remove this monstrosity." Alex couldn't help but chuckle. "Really, Karen? You think a few pieces of paper are going to intimidate me?" He plucked the documents from the gate, flipping through them with a dismissive wave of his hand. "This is a direct violation of the neighborhood covenants," Karen insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "You're putting us all at risk with this. this fortress you've built." Alex fixed her with a cool, level stare. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Karen. My gate is perfectly within the bounds of the covenants. In fact, I've gone to great lengths to ensure it complies with all local regulations." Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. But the Homeowners Association." "The Homeowners Association?" Alex interrupted with a derisive snort. "Please, I'm on the board, Karen. Do you really think they're going to side with you against me?" Karen's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and frustration. Alex couldn't resist a triumphant smile. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a family to attend to," he said, tucking the papers under his arm. "I'd suggest you go home and find a more productive way to spend your time." With that, he turned and headed back inside, leaving a fuming Karen in his wake. As the door clicked shut behind him, Alex couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. He knew this was only the beginning of their ongoing battle, but for now, the victory was his. Little did he know, Karen was already hatching a new plan, one that would test the limits of his precious security system and his own resolve. The next few days passed in an uneasy silence. Alex kept a vigilant eye on his security cameras, half expecting Karen to make another appearance. But the neighborhood remained eerily calm, save for the occasional dog walker or jogger. Just when Alex was beginning to let his guard down, the unexpected happened. It was late one evening, and Alex was just settling down to watch the news when his phone suddenly began to buzz. He frowned, glancing down at the screen, which displayed a notification from his home security system. "Motion detected at the front gate," the alert read. Alex's heart raced as he leaped to his feet, rushing over to the bank of monitors that displayed the camera feeds. There on the screen, he saw a shadowy figure creeping along the perimeter of his property. "Karen," he muttered under his breath, his jaw tightening with anger. He watched as the figure paused, seemingly examining the gate. Then, to his utter disbelief, the figure produced a set of lock-picking tools and began to methodically work on the biometric lock. "Oh, no you don't," Alex growled, snatching up his keys and heading for the front door. He was going to put a stop to this nonsense once and for all. As he stepped outside, the figure whirled around, sensing his presence. Even in the dim light, Alex could make out the unmistakable features of his neighbor's face. "Karen," he shouted, his voice laced with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered, her expression shifting to one of defiant determination. "I'm taking back what's mine, Alex," she spat, her fingers still clutching the lock-picking tools. "This gate is a menace to the entire neighborhood, and I'm going to make sure it's removed, one way or another." Alex felt a surge of rage coursing through him. "This gate is my property, Karen, and you have no right to tamper with it. I'll have you arrested for trespassing and vandalism." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. "Go ahead, call the police. But I've got a perfectly good case against you and your precious security system." She gestured dismissively at the gate. "This is nothing more than a glorified fortress, designed to keep the world out, and your neighbors in." Alex opened his mouth to retort, but before he could, the sound of a siren pierced the night air. Both he and Karen froze, their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Moments later, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb, and two officers stepped out, their expressions grim. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of them asked, his gaze sweeping over the scene. Alex straightened his shoulders, his voice steady as he replied, "Officer, this woman was attempting to break into my property and tamper with my security system. I'd like to press charges." Karen's face twisted with outrage, but before she could speak, the other officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the gate," he said sternly. "If you've got a complaint, you'll need to file it through the proper channels." As the officers escorted a furious Karen to their car, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. He had won this round, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Karen struck back. And when she did, he would be ready. With a deep breath, he turned and headed back inside, his mind already racing with plans to fortify his defenses. This was a war, and he was determined to emerge victorious. The next few days passed in an uneasy silence. Alex kept a vigilant eye on his security cameras, half expecting Karen to make another appearance. But the neighborhood remained eerily calm, save for the occasional dog walker or jogger. Just when Alex was beginning to let his guard down, the unexpected happened. It was late one evening, and Alex was just settling down to watch the news when his phone suddenly began to buzz. He frowned, glancing down at the screen, which displayed a notification from his home security system. Motion detected at the front gate, the alert read. Alex's heart raced as he leaped to his feet, rushing over to the bank of monitors that display the camera feeds. There on the screen, he saw a shadowy figure creeping along the perimeter of his property. Karen, he muttered under his breath, his jaw tightening with anger. He watched as the figure paused, seemingly examining the gate. Then, to his utter disbelief, the figure produced a set of lock-picking tools and began to methodically work on the biometric lock. "Oh, no you don't," Alex growled, snatching up his keys and heading for the front door. He was going to put a stop to this nonsense once and for all. As he stepped outside, the figure whirled around, sensing his presence. Even in the dim light, Alex could make out the unmistakable features of his neighbor's face. "Karen," he shouted, his voice laced with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly recovered, her expression shifting to one of defiant determination. "I'm taking back what's mine, Alex," she spat, her fingers still clutching the lock-picking tools. "This gate is a menace to the entire neighborhood, and I'm going to make sure it's removed, one way or another." Alex felt a surge of rage coursing through him. "This gate is my property, Karen, and you have no right to tamper with it. I'll have you arrested for trespassing and vandalism." Karen's lips curled into a sneer. "Go ahead, call the police. But I've got a perfectly good case against you and your precious security system." She gestured dismissively at the gate. "This is nothing more than a glorified fortress, designed to keep the world out, and your neighbors in." Alex opened his mouth to retort, but before he could, the sound of a siren pierced the night air. Both he and Karen froze, their eyes locked in a silent battle of wills. Moments later, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb, and two officers stepped out, their expressions grim. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of them asked, his gaze sweeping over the scene. Alex straightened his shoulders, his voice steady as he replied, "Officer, this woman was attempting to break into my property and tamper with my security system. I'd like to press charges." Karen's face twisted with outrage, but before she could speak, the other officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the gate," he said sternly. "If you've got a complaint, you'll need to file it through the proper channels." As the officers escorted a furious Karen to their car, Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. He had won this round, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Karen struck back. And when she did, he would be ready. With a deep breath, he turned and headed back inside, his mind already racing with plans to fortify his defenses. This was a war, and he was determined to emerge victorious. The meeting with the Homeowners Association was tense, to say the least. Alex sat in the cramped community center, his back ramrod straight, as Karen and a group of his other neighbors laid out their grievances. "This gate is a clear violation of our neighborhood covenants," Karen declared, her voice dripping with self-righteous indignation. "It's an eyesore, and it makes the entire community feel like we're living in a prison." Alex opened his mouth to respond, but the association president, a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Wilkins, held up a hand. Now, let's try to keep this civil," she interjected, her gaze sweeping over the room. "Mr. Wilkins, I understand you've been a model homeowner for many years, but the concerns raised by your neighbors are valid. Can you explain the purpose of this security system? Alex took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. Certainly, Mrs. Wilkins. As you all know, I take the safety and security of my family very seriously. After an incident with Karen's dog last month, I decided to upgrade my home's defenses to ensure that nothing like that ever happens again. Karen let out a scoff, and several of the other homeowners murmured in agreement. But this gate is overkill, she exclaimed. It's like you're turning our neighborhood into a military base. Alex raised a hand, silencing her. I can assure you, the measures I've taken are entirely within the bounds of the law and our neighborhood covenants. I've consulted with security experts, and they've advised me that this level of protection is necessary given the increasing threats we face in today's world. The room erupted in a chorus of protests, with several homeowners voicing their concerns about the police state Alex was creating. Enough, Mrs. Wilkins shouted, slamming her fist on the table. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. Mr. Wilkins, I understand your concerns, but I'm afraid we simply can't have this. As Alex stormed out of the community center, his mind was racing with a mix of fury and determination. He couldn't believe that the Homeowners Association had sided with Karen and the rest of his neighbors, ordering him to remove the gate he had worked so hard to install. But even as the anger coursed through him, Alex couldn't help but admire the cunning Karen had displayed. She had clearly orchestrated this entire situation, using the association's rules and regulations against him. It was a bold move, and a part of him couldn't help but respect her tenacity. Still, he wasn't about to let her win without a fight. As he climbed into his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, he began to formulate a plan. First, he would need to consult with his lawyer to see if there were any legal avenues he could pursue to challenge the association's decision. Perhaps he could argue that his security measures were a necessary protection for his family, given the recent incident with Karen's dog. But even as he considered that option, he knew it would be an uphill battle. The association had made its stance clear, and they were unlikely to budge, no matter how many legal threats he threw their way. No, he would need to take a different approach, one that would catch Karen and the rest of his neighbors off guard. As he pulled into his driveway, a grim smile spread across his face. He had an idea, one that would not only protect his home, but also send a clear message to anyone who dared to challenge him. He strode into the house, heading straight for his home office. Firing up his computer, he began to scour the internet, searching for the latest advancements in home security technology. It wasn't long before he stumbled upon something that piqued his interest. A cutting-edge surveillance system that could track and identify individuals using facial recognition technology. The price tag was steep, but Alex didn't even hesitate. He pulled out his credit card and placed the order, his finger trembling with anticipation. As the system was being shipped, Alex set to work preparing his home for the upgrade. He reinforced the gates, installed additional motion sensors, and even added a few surprises that he knew would catch his unsuspecting neighbors off guard. By the time the new surveillance system arrived, Alex was ready. He spent hours painstakingly configuring the software, ensuring that it was linked to every camera and sensor on his property. And then he waited. It didn't take long for Karen to make her move. Just a few days later, Alex's phone buzzed with an alert. Motion detected at the front gate. Grinning wickedly, he pulled up the live feed on his computer, his eyes glued to the screen. There was Karen, once again trying to breach his defenses, this time armed with a set of bolt cutters. But this time, Alex was ready. As Karen began to cut through the gate, a high-pitched alarm pierced the air, causing her to jump in surprise. Seconds later, a powerful stream of water erupted from the ground, drenching her from head to toe. Alex watched with glee as Karen stumbled backwards, her eyes wide with shock and terror. But the real show was just beginning. Suddenly, a series of bright floodlights illuminated the area, casting a harsh glare on the scene. And then, a booming voice echoed through the neighborhood. "Attention, intruder. You have been detected and identified as Karen Simmons. This is a secured property, and any further attempts to breach the perimeter will result in immediate law enforcement response. Leave the area immediately or face the consequences." As the message repeated, Alex couldn't help but chuckle. He had finally found a way to outwit his neighbor, and he was savoring every moment of it. But little did he know, Karen was far from finished. She was about to take this battle to a whole new level. Karen stood there, drenched and humiliated, as the booming voice continued to echo through the neighborhood. She could feel the eyes of her neighbors watching from their windows, and the fury burning in her chest was almost too much to bear. How dare Alex turn his home into some kind of high-tech fortress, complete with military-grade security measures? This was a suburban neighborhood, not a war zone, and she was determined to put an end to his Homeland security charade once and for all. As the message repeated, Karen gritted her teeth and began to back away from the gate. She knew that trying to force her way in now would only result in more trouble, and she needed to regroup and come up with a new plan. But as she walked back to her car, her mind was racing. She couldn't let Alex get away with this. It was time to take the gloves off and fight fire with fire. The next day, Karen arrived at the local news station, armed with a carefully crafted story and a stack of incriminating evidence. She painted a vivid picture of her poor, defenseless neighborhood, terrorized by a power-hungry neighbor who had turned his home into a virtual fortress. The reporters were immediately intrigued, and within a matter of hours, a news crew was dispatched to Alex's house, cameras rolling. Karen watched with a triumphant grin as they captured the imposing gate, the floodlights, and the automated security system in all its glory. When the story aired that evening, it was a sensation. Viewers were outraged at the tyrannical measures Alex had taken, and the backlash was swift and severe. Social media was flooded with angry comments and calls for action, and the Homeowners Association was bombarded with demands to take immediate steps to remove the gate. Alex, who had been feeling confident in his latest security upgrades, found himself suddenly on the defensive. As the media scrutiny intensified, he was summoned to an emergency meeting with the association, where he was met with a barrage of angry questions and demands. "This is an absolute outrage," one of the homeowners shouted. "You're turning our neighborhood into a police state." "I'm simply trying to protect my family," Alex tried to explain, but his words were drowned out by the deafening chorus of protests. In the end, the association had no choice but to take swift action. They ordered Alex to remove the gate within 48 hours, threatening legal action if he refused to comply. As Alex watched the news crew pack up and leave, his heart sank. He had thought he had finally found a way to outsmart Karen, but she had once again outmaneuvered him, using the power of the media to turn the entire community against him. With a heavy sigh, he trudged back into his house, his mind racing with a desperate attempt to find a way to salvage his security system. But as he looked around at the empty space where the gate had once stood, he knew that the battle was lost. Or was it? Deep down, Alex knew that he couldn't let Karen win. This was his home, his fortress, and he would be damned if he was going to let her take it away from him. He just needed to find a new way to fight back, one that would catch her completely off guard. As the sun set, Alex began to formulate a plan, his eyes gleaming with a new sense of determination. Karen may have won this round, but the war was far from over. The next few days were a flurry of activity for Alex. With the threat of legal action looming, he knew he had to act fast if he wanted to save his carefully constructed security system. First, he reached out to his lawyer, determined to explore every possible legal avenue to challenge the Homeowners Association's decision. But even as he meticulously went through the details of his case, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that the odds were stacked against him. Undeterred, Alex turned his attention to another front, the media. If Karen could use the power of the press to turn the neighborhood against him, then he would do the same. He reached out to his own network of contacts, pitching a story that would cast him as the victim, a man simply trying to protect his family in the face of an unrelenting and irrational neighbor. The plan worked like a charm. Within a matter of days, a local news station had dispatched a crew to Alex's home, eager to hear his side of the story. As the cameras rolled, Alex expertly articulated his position, emphasizing the importance of personal safety and the need for reasonable security measures in today's world. The resulting segment painted a very different picture from the one Karen had presented. Viewers were now sympathetic to Alex's plight, and the Homeowners Association found itself facing a growing backlash from the community. But Alex wasn't done yet. As the news crew packed up and left, he turned his attention to the final phase of his plan, a surprise that would leave Karen and the rest of the neighborhood reeling. Under the cover of darkness, Alex's crew of trusted technicians descended upon his home, working tirelessly through the night. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the transformation was complete. Gone was the imposing gate, replaced by a sleek, futuristic barrier that seemed to melt seamlessly into the landscape. The floodlights had been hidden, and the surveillance system had been upgraded with the latest in stealth technology. As Karen approached the property, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Something was different, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Cautiously, she pressed the intercom button, only to be greeted by a disembodied voice. "Welcome, Ms. Simmons. Please state your business." Karen's eyes went wide, and she felt a chill run down her spine. "What is this?" "This is the new and improved security system for this property," the voice replied, its tone cool and clinical. "I'm afraid I can't allow you to enter without proper authorization." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but before she could utter a word, the ground began to rumble. Suddenly, a series of retractable barriers emerged from the ground, effectively sealing off the entire property. "What is the meaning of this?" Karen shrieked, her voice laced with panic. "This is your final warning, Miss Simmons," the voice intoned. "Any further attempts to breach the perimeter will result in immediate consequences. I suggest you leave the premises immediately." As Karen stood there, paralyzed with fear and confusion, she knew that she had met her match. Alex had not only outmaneuvered her in the media, but he had also managed to upgrade his security system in a way that rendered her utterly powerless. With a defeated sigh, Karen turned and trudged back to her car, her shoulders slumped in resignation. She had lost this battle, but she knew that the war was far from over. Somewhere, deep down, she couldn't help but respect Alex's determination and resourcefulness. As for Alex, he watched from the safety of his home, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. He had finally found a way to protect his family, and he wasn't about to let anyone, not even Karen, take that away from him. The neighborhood may have been divided, but one thing was certain. Alex Wilkins was no longer the pushover next door. He was a force to be reckoned with, and he was willing to go to any lengths to defend what was his.